So today, I'm going to change things up a little bit. I'm going to tell you a tale, a story about loss, redemption, and a brotherly bond like no other. This is of course the story of Wario and Waluigi in the game called Kenshi. But I didn't really need to tell you that, as you can clearly see that these characters are in fact Wario and Waluigi from the Nintendo franchise. Fun fact, Wario and Waluigi are not brothers, but that doesn't mean that they can't share a brotherly bond like real brothers do. Their story starts off like many others, in a desert surrounded by an overwhelming number of cannibals and in the middle of a losing fight. As impressive as these boys are, they did sadly lose, and they ended up being in prison to be eventually eaten. Luckily, however, these two brothers from another mother are a little mischievous, and during the night, they actually managed to pick the locks and escape from this cannibal camp. Unfortunately, they did get caught by a guard, and Waluigi had valiantly sacrificed himself in order to protect the man that he loved just like a brother, who managed to escape, but not for long, as another tribe of cannibals found him. And after having beaten him to a pulp, they took him to their much more defended and fortified camp. Neither one of these not brothers knew where the other one was. Waluigi prayed to his god that Wario would be safe, and that one day hopefully they could be reunited. Finally, Waluigi mustered up the courage to escape, and in the wild, he met some green cannibals who ran alongside with him, presumably because they assumed that this giant toothpick of a man was their god. The joys of having friends running with you like some kind of pack of dogs was short-lived, however, as naturally, spider robots showed up, and they ended up killing all of them, leaving Waluigi alone, hoping that one day he would find his friend and would be reunited with his one true not-brother Wario. Wario, on the other hand, was a little preoccupied with his own issues. He was locked up in a much more fortified camp, and although he hoped that Waluigi was safe, Waluigi did end up dying off-screen, because that's kind of how things go as a sidekick. You just don't get as much attention, and simply you might just die off-screen because maybe somebody forgot to go check up on you, and was more focused on Wario. After all hope seemed to be lost, a robot with a giant sword along with some other people showed up and just destroyed the cannibals. Sadly though, what the cannibals lacked in skill, they made up for in numbers, and they did manage to take down the majority of the men who had attacked them. Wario though had a bit of a revelation there. He decided to leave behind his life of crime and start a new life for himself. After having borrowed some clothes and weapons from the unconscious bodies, he then rescued these hunters in an attempt to start a revolution. One that ended pretty quickly as they were again overwhelmed, and also these soldiers were now missing their armor and weapons. Mysteriously, also, Wario coincidentally had a ton of new gear, but no one seemed to question that. Again, things seemed lost, until a giant bird dinosaur turtle thing showed up, and Wario used that opportunity to save himself, rob the cannibals, and leave most of these adventurers here to deal with this on their own, because let's be honest, old habits die hard. And Wario could start a new leaf once he wasn't in a life or death situation, and maybe it could just be something like opening up a bank account instead of robbing a bank. Instead of choosing between being eaten by a giant turtle monster or being eaten by cannibals. After this, Wario spent days running through the desert. He met some screaming people who he had a lovely conversation with, and eventually he left to go on his own. Now, starving and near death, he didn't know if he was going to find food soon, and Wario had almost given up all hope, until he met a bunch of these religious folks who were fighting some dogs, and these guys gave him provisions. Finally, things seemed to be turning around for Wario, until of course he came across a slave camp. He was going to leave them be, but then he thought to himself, WWWD, which of course stood for What Would Waluigi Do? Although he tried to do the right thing by saving them, he ended up getting caught and was made himself into a slave. Little did these slavers know, Wario spent far too long unlocking cages, and he quickly managed to escape his shackles and went out looking for a brand new world. This is of course where Wario ended up finding Smash Bros. And essentially, this story is the origin of Wario and Waluigi that Nintendo doesn't want you to know. And of course, this is the reason why Waluigi will never be in a Smash Bros. Game, because his corpse is lying on a beach somewhere after being defeated by a giant robot spider. There's another video, and I want to thank you for watching it this far along. If you did enjoy it, you can feel free to leave it a like, you can subscribe, you can share. You don't have to do any of that stuff though. Really, if you didn't like it, feel free to dislike. You can make angry comments, you can go yell at your neighbor. I don't really know what you do when you're upset, but you can do it. I just hope that I helped you have yourself a nice day.